Jesse's gone. Will Jurgen be left? I'm going to get to all of that in a sec. This is One Kick from Glory. I'm joined as always by Matthew,
Yes.
and Markus is here with us.
Yeah.
Craig can't make it today, but he sends his best wishes. We are going to start off, as the intro suggested, by talking about Jesse Marsch, the latest manager to be relieved of their duties in the Premier League. Some would say not before long. Others would say he probably deserved a bit longer. I want to start with you, Markus. When you heard the news of Jesse Marsch's sacking, what was your kind of thoughts and reactions to all of it?
Yeah, not surprised. Leeds have been in free fall. They have not been winning games. They've been struggling. Obviously, Jesse tries to play a style of football that is appealing, but end of the day, if you don't have any leverage with a football club, then it's a results game, and the results weren't good enough.
No, they weren't at all. I think the only sad news for you, Matthew, is that that's another 3 points off the board that you potentially could have gotten from a team, and you're desperately crying out for points. I mean, for you, do you look at that sacking? Obviously, your former player Lampard was the previous manager to lose his job. And of course, your former manager, Tuchel, was one of the first casualties of the season. So I feel like you're quite well averse to managers being let go. But how do you think the general sentiment is going to be now, just with Marsh now being gone?
Well, the next thing is going, well, who's going to be next? The funny thing is I listened to the radio the other day and just happened to catch where they were saying who they're kind of like the next manager. And I don't know whether it's grandeur or just pure ambition, but we're looking at names where it's like, okay, you're going after people who are like somebodies who can prove, have a point to prove. I heard one guy talking about Pochettino, which I thought Pochettino was one of the people that got named. No one else said Frank Lampard. Some actually said they wouldn't mind having Bielsa coming back.
Would he even want the job again?
I don't think he wanted him back. But we have to get that bucket, bring it back out of retirement. But it's a shame to see because it's like, I know they're not in like the worst spot, but we're not in a good spot because we've literally blinked. And like we said a few weeks ago, Forest have literally on the better half of the bottom half of the table. Results are picking up for them, getting points against us, beating teams like Leeds and not. I think theirs is for the neck between here and now, their home games are going to count massively. Getting knocked out the Carabao Cup is probably the best thing that could have happened to them. They need that Premier League survival so they can go again in January and actually establish, a stronger plan to kind of push up the table just that little bit more because the history they have that it's nice to see them back in the league. But I don't feel either way about it. It's one of those one that was coming, but it'll be interesting to see who comes in next. I highly doubt Pochettino is going to be in the dugout at Ellen Road anytime soon.
Yeah, there's a lot of different candidates that have been touted as potential names. I know Ralph Hasenhüttl's name's in the bag. Of course, Marcelo Bielsa is an option. They're also looking at Celtics manager Anger Postecoglou, and they're looking at Rayo Vallecano's manager Adriano Iraola. But I guess for you, Markus, if you were to pick the next manager for Leeds, considering not just the culture of the city, but how greatly intertwined the fans are to how they do things, who would be the coach that you think would be the right manager to bring them forward?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I think Leeds have to be ambitious at this stage. Like, there's, a couple of examples. You look at like Southampton, who ended up hiring the Luton manager when they was looking for a new manager, and they're still kind of in the mix for relegation. And when you're in that spot, like where Leeds are, finishing ninth under Bielsa, and then kind of just staying up last year, you want to really be ambitious. So I heard the owner flew back to London to meet with Pochettino for dinner, and you want to make them types of pitches. They are the type of pitches you want. I think Pochettino is more likely to hold out to the summer and see what's available to him in the summer. Likely Tottenham. And the Conte situation, and see how that gets resolved. But another name that I heard mentioned was Luis Enrique, which I think would be an interesting candidate, again, kind of pitching way above their station. And I like that idea. I'm just more inclined to think that Leeds will probably end up settling with the likes of someone that is just kind of at their level, or a pull up, like, for example, Corberan, the West Brom manager. But yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I heard reports that Corporan turned them down to stay at West Brom. He wants to see that project through. I mean, based on the bookmakers, they're putting final manager Arne Slot as the favourite, 11 to
okay.
10 to get that job, and then in second place is Andoni Iraola at 5 to 4. So we'll see how things spin. Maybe they could be wrong. The bookmakers usually have a good sense for these kind of things. But speaking of Maurizio Pochettino and his potential return to Spurs, of course, we had the record-breaking feat of Mr. Harry Kane, MBE, I believe he's an MBE.
Yes.
And first off, no sarcasm. I just want to give a good round of applause for Harry. That's enough claps. It's an incredible achievement for him to be, to become the all-time top goal scorer at your club. I remember when Omri beat Ian Wright's record in the Champions League away to Slavia Prague all those years ago, and it was just special to know that that record is now gone on to a player in this current era. Obviously, Wrighty was, within the same era as Omri, but like they just missed each other by a few seasons of playing together.
Like pass of a torch a little bit.
Yeah, but it just felt seismic, that moment. And I know for Tottenham fans in particular, they'll be so glad of Harry Kane getting that record. I know he's really proud of himself for doing it. He's got his eyes now on the Premier League one, of course. For you, Matthew, when you look at what Harry Kane has achieved, do you think now we could comfortably say that Harry Kane is top 3 best Premier League strikers of all time?
It's tricky because you consider there's so many other candidates up there, but I wouldn't shy away if someone did put him in there, because after the record he's just had and the record he can probably go and get in his career, he definitely does deserve it. I think we sometimes underestimate how good he is because of no disrespect, he does play. He is a Spurs player, and also for what he does for England. Actually, on the Spurs tribute, I hope you're recovering from your operation nicely. All the best for you in Italy. I can't wait to see you back in the dugout, mate. But just don't beat us, okay? I've done my bit. But we forget just how effective he is, because he's a dream of a striker when you think about it. He can score from anything. He's gonna be a nightmare for defenders.
So
He's like, you look at the breadth of goals he scores, headers, the goal he scored on the weekend, classic striker's goal, tap in, long range. I mean, the guy, irregardless of what happened in the World Cup, he can do a good penalty. There's literally, and that covers so much of what a striker is able to do. Plus, if you look at what in numbers behind Haaland, he's not massively far behind. I'm not saying he's going to beat Haaland, but considering he's the only one that's actually close, and a big chunk of those goals from him for Tottenham are coming from him, keep him in that fight for the top 4. It shows you for Spurs, he's nothing short of instrumental.
I agree.
For them, nothing short of instrumental. And yeah, like I said before, we sometimes forget because of the shirt that he wears most of the time, not necessarily matching his ambition. That's what sometimes makes it unfair at that in a way, because it's almost you can see what he could do if he takes those attributes with him, because they're natural attributes, there's natural striker's instincts. If he could take that to another club, who knows what the damage he could do would be like sensational.
Yes, the key words is take it to another club, because obviously he's happy and comfortable in Spurs. I don't know why, but
he's now he's broken the record. That might be an incentive to keep him. You never know if he's going to break. You never know. You never know. I think he's got the incentive. He's broke the record after God knows how many years. He's showed commitment to them already. So I don't know.
Yeah. On that note, Marcus, I got a double question for you. The first question is, I know we've mentioned this before about Harry Kane and moving on from Tottenham, but so I'm not really going to ask you, should he move on from Tottenham? The question I want to say is, what do you think would be a reasonable fee for him this summer? And the second question is, as I said, I think Kane is now in the top 3 of Premier League strikers now in history, which is a bit funny because Alan Shearer will be looking at me like, are you feeling all right? So my question for you, Marcus, then is, if Kane is in the top 3, would you say he's a better striker than Luis Suarez was to Liverpool?
Good questions. The thing about Kane and his time at Tottenham, and the more and more I think about it, I know he's won nothing, and I know at the end of the day that's going to be what he's going to be measured by. And I just wonder, is it better to enjoy and become a fan's legend at your home club, when your club is as big as Tottenham, and like we're not talking Jack Grealish and Aston Villa here. Like, we're talking a club that's there or thereabouts on the Champions League stage. They're in the knockouts of the Champions League. They got to a final, within the last few years. They've had a couple of runs at the title. Granted, they fell short, but is it better to be a legend there than to win a couple of Bundesligas at Bayern Munich? Or to even go to Man City and win a title that'll be taken off you in 5 years. I don't know. I'm not sure that and the move to Man United has always felt a bit sideways at this particular stage in his career, and kind of where Man United have been at versus where Spurs have been at. So I don't know. I don't know if he will move on, especially with that Premier League record. But is Harry Kane a better striker than Luis Suarez? Consistency-wise, yes. Like, what he's done over, 7 or 8 years is nothing short of phenomenal. 20-odd goals a season, consistent, brilliant finisher. Yeah, season where he finished top goal scorer, top assists a couple of seasons ago, or second assists behind De Bruyne. But like that level of output from a striker that for a long time we thought just scored goals. And I think to answer that, I would say yes, consistently. In terms of peak season, I think Suarez's peak season at Liverpool was still a higher level of production and quality than Harry Kane has done in any one season. But that would be my evaluation.
Yeah, I agree with that assessment. I do think that Kane hasn't had an individual season that's anywhere close to what Suarez has done. That guy was on demon time. It was ridiculous, man. I used to feel sorry for some defenses, man. You look at the game, the lineup, look in the tunnel, you see Luis Suarez's face, and you just knew he's getting two today.
Yeah.
Norwich.
He's getting two at least.
Norwich. If you're Norwich, he's getting more than that.
For Norwich, you just knew it was just done before it even begun.
He scored some goals, man. Gee.
We've got a big topic to get to, but just before we land there, I just want to quickly touch on our games this past week. And I mean, very, very quickly, there's not really much to say about it. We'll start off with Chelsea. Very boring 0-0 draw on a Friday night. Very disappointed. Todd Boehly did not look impressed. I was expecting the P45 for Graham Potter in the post to have landed on kick on full time, but obviously it didn't happen. Do you, looking at the landscape for Chelsea, do you think Potter's got long in the job, and do you think he can turn it around if he stays?
If he keeps on getting results like that and 0-0, it was a bore 0-0 as well, then probably not. Let's just say the very small part of the P has been dotted on the line. For every result that doesn't go the way that I want it, as Todd Boehly says, let's just say it's like hangman. So one there, one there, one there, one there. It's a very long game of hangman.
Yeah.
Because as much as we don't know the extent of Potter's involvement in much of these transfers, these are transfers where we spent a butt ton of money. We're providing now for the future. We see you as a future, basically kind of work with it, which you can look at that as 1 and 2 as a bad way, because the manager should be the one that picking the players. But at the same time now, it's like he's gone and done what a lot of owners would never ever do. So he's just basically asking just to make it work. But if you keep on getting really bad results, and we're playing the run of teams we're playing right now around us, are teams we should be beating. Not West Ham next. Really and truly, we should be beating them. So if we get anything other than a win, even just a win, a 1-0 mini little scrap where 3 points, but it's 3 points on the board, it's another thing.
Are you home or away against West Ham?
We are away. We are away, so this is gonna be it's a tough game. They're in the wrong part of the table. They might have a bit of a point to prove. Declan Rice might be looking at his options. I don't know, but I'll tell you what, it was a boring 0-0, but it was also a slightly more promising one because I didn't feel too massively threatened that they were going to come by and doing anything. Apart from when the ball was going over, he's like old Kepa actually got voodoo in his body, and he's taken out a ball that was going out anyway to get him back down by the goal. It's a bit like the Merseyside derby one, where Jordan Pickford thought it was going out and Origi just jump up and just magic little header. I got that flashback in my mind thinking, Could you imagine the first game when we got turned over? Could you imagine Fulham doing a double over us for the first time in like God knows how long? So good thing that didn't happen. But there was promise. But let's just say the first line of the Hangman P45, very small, is starting to come in. So I think he will get results. I can see us getting results against West Ham. We're going to have to work for it, but harder games will come.
Quick question on that point. Next week. Quick question on that point, because obviously struggling to score goals. Struggling to do a lot of good things, right? João Felix looked sharp on his debut. He got a red card, obviously, so he missed a few games. Mudryk looked good in the little brief cameo he had, although it was against James Milner, so I'm going to put an asterisk next to it because against Fulham, Tete had him in his back pocket, in the locker, not even on the pitch. But do you think now, kind of a little bit hindsight, leaving Aubameyang out of the Champions League squad and also obviously not including him at all this weekend, do you think that's a bad decision by the manager that's going to probably have repercussions as the season goes on? Because the more you don't score goals, the more people look to him and say, well, you had a goal scorer on your bench.
He's the only pure and natural striker that we actually have. Because for all the players that we did buy, what we didn't get was a striker.
Well, you got Fofana,
but at the same time, he's going to get time to kind of mold in and kind of, mold to a Premier League way. You've already got a Premier League proven striker already who was, who's also a trophy winner, who's also, I think at one point then he got the Golden Boot, albeit a few years ago. Yep. Don't you think there's a little bit in him that says that he can still do that? He can still find a way to get his ball in the back of the net. I don't know if something's happened backstage. I don't know whether the influx of players put him under a bit of a threat and he might be feeling a bit squeamish. I don't know. But I also know that when you have a striker there, even if it's just a one striker, you kind of owe it to the way to play him if we're lacking with goals, because it's now two on the bounce, 0-0. 2 on the bounce, 0-0. I don't think he even was on the bench for either one of them. He definitely didn't start. So tongues will wag, definitely. It might make that P on that P45 just that little bit longer. Well, he had a striker, he didn't play him. And I know you got Fofana there, but he's brand new, he's fresh, he's going to be so raw. So at least there, at least then, look, we already can write off the point that this part of the season there's a good chance of not making top 4. At least give something for the fans. At least get some goals. At least show a little bit of fight, because these players here were shown a long-term vision. So they're not necessarily looking forward to next year. We're looking probably to 3 years after that. You're talking 5 to 8 year contracts. So they already know what they're signing up to. That's what we're getting involved in. Because they're it. We're not signing any more players in the summer, or at least we shouldn't be.
Who said you're not? I've already heard you guys are looking to do some business in the summer.
Well, we all get people out, but the point about we've got people one out. Thanks for taking him. We've got one out. There's still plenty more that can leave. I can name about 5 right now that can need to go. But yeah, if you have a striker, play him. Play him. He's not going for free. Play him. So because if you don't, and the goals dry up, and we're not getting any more points, that much points on the board, tongues will wag. So
yeah, Reece James posted a very cryptic post on Instagram, which it's an Instagram story, so you can interpret it as being directed at the club or not. He said that if people aren't prepared to carry bricks for you or carry wood for you, leave them behind. And everyone was like, "Oh, what is this? Does this mean is he pointing fingers?" I don't know. It could have just been like a random, just sound kind of smart thing, but there might be something in it. Switching over to Arsenal, obviously we lost 1-0 against Everton away from home. New manager bounce, Sean Dyche, well done. Arteta finally referred to them as Burnley. I mean, it was a goal made in Burnley. Tarkowski at the header off Dwight McNeil's corner. Can't really argue with that. I think the mistake we made is we just didn't raise our game enough to match them. It's a shame that when we brought on Jorginho from the next phase of play, they scored from the set piece. Good play from them. They blocked off Saliba, who was blocking that back post area. So I'm not really overly upset about that defeat. I wish we could have raised our game, could have gotten a draw out of it at least. But I always knew it was going to be tricky going away to them. Obviously, you'd want to get the 3 points. It's just a shame, Lampard, you couldn't hold on for one more week or 3 more, or another month. So all of us could have gotten 3 points of Everton, you know.
Right.
But I hope you're happy with yourself and you just take a long break from management. I'm talking at least 2 more years. Maybe go to spend some time in Atletico Madrid, learn from Simeone how to coach. Then go to Real Madrid and learn how to be a man manager, and then maybe then you might have something. Because right now you don't have it. But yeah, I'm not overly upset, and Arteta was right. I think it's the time for him to be around the players. It's not the worst defeat we've ever had. It's disappointing because we've played so well, but it was a kind of result where we've not won at Goodison Park in 7 seasons, which is astounding to think of. But there was a precedent there for some upset, and they managed to just do what needed to be done. Let's move over to our dear friends, other friends in red. Liverpool. Now, I have to admit, I was at an event on the weekend. So you played on Saturday, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, 3 o'clock.
Yeah. So I was at an event. So I didn't really get to see the start of the game. All I know is I got to the event. I checked my phone. I saw it was someone said to me, "Oh, Liverpool are losing badly." I said, "What do you mean losing badly?" Checked it. I saw it was 2-0 at half 2-0 before halftime. I was like, "Jesu." I couldn't believe it. So Marcus, I want to hand the floor over to you, but just before I do, now we've been talking a lot about Liverpool, and Craig said it himself. This is not. You've had a season like this before. It's 2 seasons ago, exactly. When after Pickford committed GBH against Virgil van Dijk and snapped his leg, and he was out for the season, which didn't receive any sufficient punishment as far as I'm concerned. Pickford should have been banned for as long as Van Dijk was out injured, but that's a conversation for another day. But anyway, you know that was a write-off season, so you gave Nat Phillips and you gave a lot of other younger players a chance to just play and try their luck and just kind of we'll try and we'll see what we can do. And last season you came out really strong. And so, in many respects, Craig really did feel that you'll go on a run this year. There's nothing to be worried about. Liverpool will pull it together and go on a run. But it's just not coming together. And so I want to hand it over to you, and I just want to get your general sentiments on what on earth is happening at Anfield before I ask the big question. Over to you.
Yeah, look, I think everything you needed to know is when I sat down at 3 o'clock and wonderfully made my way to 12 minutes past 3 and found us 2-0 down. I wasn't really that surprised. And and I think that kind of tells you a lot of what you need to know about where Liverpool are at the moment. That, we comprehensively lost 3-0 to Wolves in a game where they had the next three best chances. And, we had a spell for 20, 25 minutes in the second half where we looked good without really being dangerous in that sense. We got the ball back, we got some nice plays and passes and combination play, but we didn't look overly threatening. And we all know the problems go deeper than what's going on the pitch, but obviously what's going on the pitch is what really everybody looks at and is what everybody judges by. And one of the 10 things I've said on the last couple of weeks in the podcast, or a combination of all 10 of them, the injuries that we have to key players, the fact that we played 63 games last season and had to deal with the emotional trauma of losing the league on the last day and the Champions League final a week later, the physical demand of Klopp's style of football on his players that is fundamentally the same core of starting players as it was 3 or 4 years ago. The fact that we basically don't have a midfield. The fact that I would have taken Wolves' three midfielders over our midfield any day of the week tells you that there's a major problem at Liverpool, that they don't have the right midfield. If I'm telling you I'd take the midfield of the team that was sat bottom of the league 3 weeks ago, I think there's there's the off the field stuff and the departure of our director of football, followed by the departure of our CEO, who went to focus on bigger sales things, so he's no longer running the club day to day, and the nature of that. There's the rumors of some coaches getting a little bit more too much power than they need, and that there's a power struggle within the coaching staff. There's the nature of the fact that we're a club that is up for sale. So therefore, money wasn't spent in the January window where it needed to be spent, and we hang in limbo over what's going to happen with the club. I just give you 8 things there, and then I think it's probably a combination of all of them. But there is a major problem at Liverpool, and how that gets resolved is going to be very interesting to watch.
Yeah, it is. It is quite sad to see, because I want all my rivals strong, except for Manchester United. I don't care if you're strong or weak. Don't like you lot. You guys. You know why I don't like you lot. 49 undefeated. Should have been 50, but you lot cheat us out of it. But I mentioned that because there does feel to be a lot of shades in how things are transpiring at Liverpool, with how it sort of started to tip turn with Arsenal and the end of his time at Arsenal. Now we know with Klopp in general, he doesn't spend this long at a club. It's the same with Pep Guardiola, but we're gonna put them in, we're coming to them in a second. But like it does feel a lot like we're at that kind of tipping point. For you from the outside looking in, Matthew, and you see how things are kind of transpiring with Liverpool, with Jurgen Klopp, the fact that he seems so surprised when things don't go their way. He doesn't seem to understand why they're not winning games, which is always the first worrying sign. The manager doesn't know what's gone wrong. And just his general demeanor, he does look lost. It's the nicest way I can put it. Do you think that it's a bit concerning and maybe that question might start getting a bit louder?
Very loud, very, very loud. Like I remember the game, it was against Brighton, I think maybe the FA Cup game or it was 2 games he played Brighton and the result didn't go their way. And you just see the expression on his face. There's a very common expression on his face, and Marcus, you might think slightly different. But whenever you guys lose, he always has the same face whenever something doesn't go their way, or he doesn't expect something. It's like this. It's like, obviously I don't know like Jurgen Klopp, so I can't pull it off. And that face just shows of a man where it's just like he doesn't know what's going on. He can't seem to. It's just a stark contrast from what happened last year when they were fighting on every front so hard. And I think people remember that, for technically, if you're talking about 2022, the number of games that you actually played per player went up, not because of just how much you're fighting for the FA Cup, Carabao Cup, Premier League, and Champions League. There's also that big elephant in the room that was the World Cup as well. So when they were fighting even pre-season, they were fighting for their spots in that team as well. And the vast majority of that team did feature in, group stages all the way up to as far as like round of 16 and things like that. So they were firing on all, can you imagine firing on all cylinders, different climates, different grounds, all that traveling, never being at one place at once, go to different hotels, especially for the 2 hotels going to Wembley when they played us twice last year. It takes you. I felt for them. You feel for the players, especially for last year, especially when it goes all the way, like getting to like World Cup finals and stuff. It's just what a toll it takes. And just chalk it down to his players must be, or most players must be absolutely beat and mentally and physically and drained. And it takes a toll. Look at all the injuries that they have and them not being able to replace them. Their main stars, like, you haven't heard the names of Salah that much. You haven't heard the names of all the, even like Luis Diaz. I mean, obviously Darwin Nunez, he's fighting, he's trying so hard. But I just think that, because I think I don't know if they've lost more, they've drawn more, but they've I think it's a high number. But it's gonna be, the whisper is gonna be a bit more of a murmur now. The murmur's gonna get louder asking that question. Is it that question that we want to ask and talk about, considering of how high up they were, even for the last few years? Has that time come? Is it now justified to mention those very words? Like, we're going to say it, and obviously Pep Guardiola as well. Is it that time?
Well, Eric Ten Hag made a very interesting, it feels very prescient statement when he first came into the league, saying about, Klopp and Guardiola have had their era, but all eras come to an end. Now, turning it back to you, Marcus, is it the end for Jurgen Klopp? And do Liverpool need to seriously consider, one, finding his replacement, and 2, giving him the right send-off that he deserves for all the incredible stuff he's done for your club over these past 6-7 years?
I think when you think about the negatives of Arsene Wenger leaving Arsenal in the way he did when he did, it was not fitting of someone who had brought so much success to a club, and it was almost just like, we need to get the man out of the door before he kills our club. And you don't want that level of sourness in that situation. And look, I don't just kind of talk about the comparison to avoid the question, because obviously it is a very pertinent question in the time we're in. But if I'm gonna talk about Jurgen Klopp, I have to say that I think he should take minimal fault for where Liverpool are. Yes, he picks the team. Yes, he creates the tactics. Yes, he's got to get the results ticking on the pitch, and he is responsible for when he doesn't do that. But outside of that reality, he has been hung out to dry by our owners. Not replacing that midfield is criminal. We have signed one actual midfielder in since 2018 when we signed Navigator or Thiago, and he has not been backed in the way that he needs to be backed, and you can argue that's because the club is in the position that it's in where they're looking to sell. But I think what I will say is this: Klopp is an incredible manager. He showed that he could turn it around in the season where we struggled before and we finished third that season. That's not going to happen this season. I don't see a way these bunch of players playing the way they're playing turn this around. Like there is nothing to suggest to me that this team are going to get anywhere close to Europe this season. And if this was anybody else, if this was Brendan Rodgers, if this was a young upcoming manager, I would quite comfortably be saying that Liverpool should not be sat at 10th in February, and whoever their manager is needs to go. And I think that is telling. Now Klopp has bought some time at Liverpool and has earned all the respect, as Liverpool manager, and with that, I think probably will be given that. But I can see a couple of scenarios playing out. The first is that it gets so bad that he walks. I think that's maybe the first scenario. I don't really see the club pushing him out the door, but he always said if it came to a point when he felt he was no longer the right man for the role in the right place, then he would step away. He said a couple of weeks ago in the press conference that he still believes he's the right man to turn this around. So at least at this stage, he still feels like he's the right man. But I think that's one scenario. I think another scenario is we get to the summer and this board situation, ownership situation is resolved to some extent, and a new owner decides whether or not they want to do the rebuild with Jurgen Klopp, and Jurgen Klopp would have the time to decide that in the summer off the back of us not being in any European competitions, because I think that's virtually inevitable at this stage. So with that, I think you can say that it is definitely time to ask the question: is his era coming to an end? Do Liverpool need to look forward? And I think in looking forward, the only thing that at this particular stage concerns me is the direction that Liverpool would potentially go in if Jurgen Klopp wasn't to be manager. Now, I've had 7 years of a great manager and not had any time to think about replacing our manager, and this is maybe the first time in a very long time I've thought about potential options for Liverpool. And I come up with three, and I think there's challenges with all three of them, but I think they are the three best candidates for Liverpool in this particular market today. Number one is Mauricio Pochettino, and I think going after Pochettino would bring something fresh, something new, something different, would be a big enough challenge for Pochettino, and again would maybe be a way in which he can see whether or not he's got what it takes at the top level to kind of revive a club or take a club into a new era. But I think the problems with Pochettino is that he's kind of struggled to do that with Paris Saint-Germain, getting across the line for the big win, and following Jurgen Klopp is not something that I'd necessarily want to do. And that might be a tricky process for Pochettino, who probably wouldn't be accepted by the fans right away, and would have to prove himself at Liverpool. So I think that's some of the problems with it, but that's candidate number one. Candidate number two, you have Thomas Tuchel, who, our good friend Matthew knows some things about, and he has spent his entire career following Jurgen Klopp. So, I don't imagine he would have too many problems. And Tuchel is a quality manager. He took Chelsea and won the Champions League off the back of Frank Lampard's time there. This Liverpool squad is better than that Chelsea squad at that time. And I fundamentally think that if he came in and got some fresh faces, he could take the club in a new direction. But you're going to be in a similar situation with Tuchel in a couple of years, where does he does he have the longevity factor of being able to come, settle in, bed in, and do something over a longer period of time? Liverpool would give him it, but Tuchel, kind of like Mourinho, tends to get under people's skin come the 18-month to 3-year mark, and or 2-year mark, 2.5-year mark, and then bridges end up getting burned because he's very abrasive and abrupt. And I think Liverpool would find that potentially a kind of mark against the likes of Thomas Tuchel. And third and finally would be Zinedine Zidane, who I think without doubt is an incredible candidate and would be probably my favorite candidate to replace Klopp. However, the big downside with Zinedine Zidane is that we would always just be a stepping stone to France. And as soon as that French job is available, Zinedine Zidane will pack his bags and go and take the French job, whether it be after a poor Euros in 2024, after a poor World Cup in 2026. So you're really only working on a short-term basis with Zidane. And is it worth the effort to invest 3-4 years in Zinedine Zidane, who hasn't proven himself outside of the elite clubs? And Liverpool needs some taking back, although he may have the sway to be able to force some transfers in the positions that he needs. And Liverpool maybe are only 2 or 3 transfers and a new idea away from being right back to where they were a season ago. But that concern around the French job always hanging over is problematic, which leads to ultimately my final sentiment, which is that maybe the best thing Liverpool can do is completely count this season as a write-off, see where we land in the summer, and consider whether we want to rebuild with a new manager who's available in the summer or Jurgen Klopp if he still feels like Liverpool is the right place for him and that he wants to go again.
You've also got one really big option as well, in that you're in the Champions League still. So you might have the worst domestic season I think you've done it before in the past where you finished 5th and won the Champions League and got into it. So you could easily do it again.
True, yeah.
It's not out of the question. In fact, it wouldn't surprise me if you did pull it off. Obviously, for this season, I have vested interest, and I want a certain team from Paris to win it. But I'm happy to put that to one side. No, I'm not. No, I'm absolutely not happy to put it to one side. It needs to happen for the culture. Messi and Mbappe and Neymar need a Champions League together. It just has to happen. But no, I like what you said there. I think the options of managers are quite interesting. Would you not consider Gerrard, or you think it's way too soon for him?
Not a chance. Nope. You don't get sacked from Aston Villa and get the Liverpool job. No, not a chance. He has to really prove himself that he's got what it takes to manage at the top level before we would give him a chance. And I don't think I wouldn't even have him. I wouldn't even interview him. Wouldn't even have him on the shortlist.
I think realistically, looking at how things are playing out, I think Klopp will get one more season. I think this year, even with Wenger, it wasn't so much the one season that was the indicator that the time was going up. It was the steady decline of what we're doing. Because I look back over the period of Wenger's, his final years at Arsenal, and if we'd won the league in 07-08, that would have bought him the extra years he stayed. That would have given him capital for it. 15-16 would have bought him capital. 11-12. I'm picking the seasons where we were there and thereabouts and then fell apart. 15-16, of course. And then, just those ones, really. Yeah. Just those particular seasons, I think that he could have done something a bit more. But alas, he got removed and now he's, welcome back with open arms. And I guess it's interesting to see what happens to Jurgen Klopp. Obviously, there's a massive news broke this week, and we would love to get into it more, but frankly, there's not enough information to say except for this: when the Premier League labels 100 charges at you as a football club, you need to get the best lawyers in the world, and you need to have your little black book, and you might want to call up Ghost and Tommy from Power just to make sure that this gets settled one way or the other, because it doesn't look good for them. As Castillo would say, it don't look good, bruv. Don't look good, bruv. But we're not really going to discuss that situation right now, or the number 11 who got let off his charges, even though we all saw the evidence, all heard the evidence, but apparently there's not enough to convict. So we're not going to talk about that either. Not today, anyway. That's a conversation for another day. But I think we'll call it a wrap there. It's really interesting what's going on with Liverpool this season. Like I said, I do think another year they can kind of turn it around. I don't think it's the
he's earned that
end for
capital.
Klopp, but it is a bit concerning. I guess for you, Matthew, for the last closing thoughts, we'll just say this in passing regarding Man City. Are you worried about your club now?
Nah.
You should be.
I'll be worried when I'll be more worried with more things come out. But for the time being, we're all right because we've been in this kind of situation before with other kind of questionable transfers and nothing's come of it. So I think we kind of skate on it very finely.
Because I'd say this, if I'm Newcastle, if I'm Chelsea, and potentially Manchester United if they get new ownership, and Liverpool if they get new ownership as well, if this Man City situation is very, very worrying if you're a mega rich state-owned club, because the issue with Man City, it's the fact that they have massaged their books in terms of how the money for sponsorship has come in. It just doesn't add up, and that's part of where the issue lies. And you can't hide that. It's not a financial fair play issue. It's breaking basic Premier League rules.
The law.
And so the punishment ranges. What could be interesting for you as a Liverpool fan, Marcus, is you might have an extra couple of Premier League trophies on your record book if the punishment is so severe. The general sentiment is that it will probably just be a points deduction. It won't happen this season because it's taken them 7 years, I think, to get to this conviction point, which is quite interesting, or to get to this charge point. So it's going to take a while to kind of go through all the information. What is good though is it's not going to be played in public, so it's going to be a private tribunal. Ironically, the main guy pushing the charges is an Arsenal fan. Just saying, doing the Lord's work. And we'll just have to see how it plays out. But I personally think if there is even a possibility of Man City being guilty, and there's a lot of smoke right now coming out of the Etihad, then I don't think Pep will be there next season.
No,
I do not think he'll be there next season. If he sticks to his word and he doesn't want to be part of a corrupt, dodgy organization again, then he will leave.
Actually saying that's mad work for 7 years worth of work to turn up over 100 charges, 7 years worth of work. That is mad.
And the timing of the release is very interesting as well. Like, who drops that on a quiet Sunday evening Monday? Like, who drops that news that time? It's just so bizarre.
Somebody was feeling. They're watching that game, being like, "Nah, now's the time. Now's the time." They were feeling it.
And the Man City owners were shocked. They did not, or leadership group was shocked. They did not see this coming. But hey, that's the best kind of surprises. But we're going to call it a wrap there. Got some more games coming up this weekend. Arsenal back in action against Brentford on Saturday. Nice early kickoff. Hope for a good bounce back after the disappointment of the game against Everton. Chelsea, who you guys got?
West Ham away. So West Ham, you know what to do. And Liverpool, who's on your upcoming fixture list?
Merseyside derby, Monday night.
Well, you got a nice little 3 points off your little neighbour brothers. Get them back for us, please. A good 3-0 hiding will do me and all of us the world of good and bring Sean Dyche's men crashing back down to earth where they belong. Because the championship is calling them. But anyway, that is us signing out. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Let us know what you think. Do you think Everton will survive under Sean Dyche? If not, let us know. Do you think Man City are done for? Will they get expelled from the Premier League? Will they be in the Championship next season? Will they be in the National League? Who knows? Will Pep Guardiola still be there? And lastly, will Jurgen Klopp turn it all around? But that's just us signing out. Till next week.
Hey.
Peace.